we have to change our thinking of everything we've always known, which can even be down to the foods we eat. We've been programmed somehow to think that you must throw this money in a bucket for later that other people manage. And I'm not saying don't do the stock market, but I will hear older generation say, there's always this rate of return that comes with the market. You have to wait 30 years and you'll see it average out, and whatever the story is. It also depends on where you were invested. But what I understand from people like you, Steve, and others that are in real estate is that private equity, having control over your own dollars today, opportunity costs, velocity of money, if we give everything into the paycheck and it's just pulled out and moved somewhere else, we lose out on opportunities that are right in front of us. And that is really taking away passive income. We're waiting for later, then we have taxes, and we're waiting for this ideal dream life way in the future, and we're not presently living now. And that's a problem for me because we don't know how long we have.
On today's episode, we have business owner, financial advisor, coach, and podcaster, Amber Stitt. Steve, listeners are going to pick it up really quickly, but you and Amber know each other just a little bit, right?
Yes, Jake. Amber is my niece, and she's been described as my twin sister from a different mother.
Yeah. In not only in looks, but just in mannerisms, in your drive to succeed. I mean, there's a lot of traits that make you guys like brother and sister, or at least just family. But this episode was incredibly fun because we went in a lot of different directions, but it really centered around a lot of discussion centered around talents and identifying your strengths and playing into them. And Amber brought up a really interesting point that most people don't spend the time they should early on in life to identify their innate strengths. And they kind of just go through life and sort of on a whim, and they try things out. And sometimes they play into their strengths, sometimes they don't. And it's not until later in life that they really decide to pinpoint what their strengths are. And it kind of sets them up for failure, throughout their life. Why do you think that is? I mean, you've been successful. You're now have exited your business. Why is it that people wait till the later half of their life to really find out what they're best at?
Jake, that is a problem and a concern for a lot of people in the business world, is that when they come out of college, they think they need to have all the answers and they have to know it all. And sometimes pride gets in the way of that. And I had to learn that later in life. I hired a coach and put a board of advisors around me to help and guide me in my business. And business is no different than a sporting event. A sporting event where, like baseball, where you have a batting coach, you have a running coach, you have a pitching coach. But for some reason in the business world, people don't have coaches. And I wish I would have done that in my 20s and 30s rather than waiting to the 40s. And with Amber's business and what she does, how to empower people through their strengths, this was a great podcast and episode that you can get a lot of benefit out of what she's doing.
Yeah. Well, let's not let it linger for too long. Let's just head on west. Stay tuned as we discuss identifying your strengths, gaining financial freedom, and finding a personal coach with our guest, Amber Stitt. This episode is brought to you by Skyline Point Capital. If you're anything like me, you're always considering where to invest your money. Stocks, bonds, crypto, a rental home, the list is literally endless. As we've all seen over the past year, the stock market is unstable, the housing market is just weird, and inflation is on the rise. In times like these, the clear place to invest my money is in multifamily real estate, aka apartment complexes. Here's why. Returns on real estate investments have little to no correlation with the stock market. There's lower volatility, stable income streams, and the tax benefits are insane. And let's not forget that the apartments will typically appreciate in value over time, which means you can walk away with a pretty nice return when the complex is sold in 3 to 5 years. Best of all, multifamily investing is passive, so you get all of the benefits without the hassle and headache of your typical rental home investment. Getting started has never been easier. Head to skylinepointcapital.com to learn how you can start investing today. Like I said, I've listened to a couple of your podcast episodes. I love it. I love being able to spy in on what other podcasters are doing. But you, from the few episodes that I've listened to, you start out your podcast by saying that you're obsessed with helping people get their financial and personal lives in order. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear, why that is, like, why that thing really strikes a note with you. But was that something that you've always been that way? You've always loved helping people and imparting your wisdom and shared experiences? Or was that something that you gained along the way, maybe from another person came alongside of you and helped you along? Like, where did that come from, and why this focus in your life?
I think the obsession, I know it sounds a little crazy. Some of that comes from experience. What's great about getting older is that you go through things and there's some wisdom there. As you get older, you start seeing things around you changing. So as a mother, a spouse, business owner, I've been an employee, you see just how life can change and go through the transitions. But it's interesting, as I get older, I'm around a lot of older people that are very successful that don't have their affairs in order. And maybe it's because I'm a firstborn. I've been told I'm a little bossy. I call it high responsibility. It's just in my personal assessments that I'm a little responsible.
Yeah.
Taking it into my 40s or even late 30s is where I really started doing a lot of personal development and finding my niche, like my groove of no apologies. I literally like insurance transactions. People think that might be weird, but I do enjoy the efficiency behind a transaction and a system. I'm a little rigid and responsible, which my counterparts on my team are not as rigid. So it's a great blend. And we could talk about that a little bit later. But getting older and becoming a parent, probably as I'm seeing aging older people in my lives, like they're having maybe some health issues. And we go back to even looking at planning for my household. It was just becoming a parent that a lot of people just don't do the work, and they're not accountable to some of the basics. Like, okay, Steve, remember back in the day, you open the cupboard and there's an emergency contact list, and we're going out for the night. Here's 911, but here's like the people closest to you, call a neighbor. And we literally rely on cell phones and technology. So there's innovation that's helpful, but we have kind of lost some of the basic, keep it simple, stupid, like going back to, if there's a problem, where are our resources if we lost our cell phones? So what systems and processes are we putting into place to have resilience? And we could talk more about the podcast framework, which is the 5 pillars I call pathways of peak performance. If we have 5 steps dialed in and something happens, which it will, how are we going to handle the stress? Because one thing out of COVID, we've realized everyone's stressed out. They can't handle a lot of the things outside of being sick. So how do we just really keep the process simple from the beginning, get all our ducks in a row, and then keep evolving that? I think it just took a lot more shape as I grew up, started running a company while also doing multiple things. It was like, let's take some action in little steps and try to get it, dialed in, and really have no excuses. There's so many resources now.
Yeah. I know you're Gallup certified. So I take it that responsibility is a top 5 strength for you.
Yeah. Input's number 1. Okay. Communication's in there too. So I have to laugh when you read the blind spots and some of that. It's to help you have that. If someone's not receiving you well, I might speak a lot about things I'm interested in. That input might get in the way and overwhelm people. So I have to dial it back a bit. But in certain meeting styles, it's great for clients that are physicians. They want a quick 30-minute consult, give it to me straight, keep it simple. Business owners can be like that too, if they're really busy. So the Gallup about 8 years ago really helped me frame where I need to be for business. And then as you become an expert, then you can take these little pathways into these other lines. I know, Steve, you've done different things along the way, which is always really cool to, get back home and try to hang out with you and catch up. But I think it's also a part of a lot of the older generation I'm friends with, they're going through this succession planning, transition. I don't know who I'll be after work period of time. And I think that Gallup can help you, or other personality assessments can help you see, what do you love? Because if you figure out what you love to do, make that your job, find the solutions that people need and fold that into your job and create it. And that's been really helpful to help me shape the primary business, but then find other business lines as you become a bigger expert in certain areas.
Yeah. What is it about, you just alluded to people at the end of their professional career start looking at Gallup and Strength Finders and identifying, okay, what am I after? Like you said, what am I doing? Who am I after work?
Mm-hmm.
What is it about doing that internal reflection that people get afraid of? They refuse to do it when they should, which is earlier on in their life. It's like you said, to find out, okay, what makes me tick? Why am I the way I am? And letting that be the thing that navigates or dictates how they move forward in their personal life and their professional life. What scares them so much, and why do they refuse that?
I think a lot of people have a hard time looking in the mirror and taking themselves seriously and saying, what I like about Gallup, I'll say this, is that it's more on the positive spectrum of, here's who I am. Let's develop those talents, but not try to fix what's in the basement. They call that lower basement, maybe 34 strengths, what's in the 30s. But knowing that you might have to pull some of those talents out of the basement. Everyone has 34. They're just the deck's reshuffled per person. They say 1 in 33 million people can have the same setup. What's interesting is my generation and older tend to be more of the high achiever type of produce lineup. As generations are shifting, there's less achiever. Not that people are not responsible in getting things done. There's more of a humanitarian aspect coming in of not just numbers, but are we being fair to everybody? So there's an interesting dynamic coming with the younger generation. But to answer your question, I think it's hard for people to really learn more about themselves and try to improve on that. And it could be anything. I don't know, Steve, do you see that with even athletes? Like, they're dialed in, they know there's a certain element, they might have to take it up another notch for the race, the game, but they might not be perfect. So they might need training. I think sometimes it's a lack of discipline. And so we got to figure out how that might work to keep whoever their personality on track so that they can be their best self. But it's a work in progress. I don't think it ever ends.
Amber, you make a great comment about athletes, and I see a big difference from executives and athletes in any type of sport. And when you're in an athlete, like I was a triathlete, and did Ironman triathlons, but there was a process. It was every day to get a little bit better, and there was discipline, focus. I had a coach that helped me get there, someone who went ahead of me and who has done it, that knows all the pitfalls. And when I was training to be an Ironman, I had a process, and it took a couple years, and then I was at the level I wanted to be. But when I see in the business world that executives are so busy, I don't need a coach. I don't need training. I'm just going to work harder, faster, be more disciplined, hire more people. And there's a big disconnect. And usually you see CEOs come to the realization, I need a coach in the 50s. Rather than they should have had it in the 30s. And some of the guys that and ladies that I work with, they feel like if I hire a coach in the business world, I'm failing.
Exactly.
Why is that disconnect? I don't understand
it. I don't know if there's a cultural thing. I don't think it's religion or culture. I think maybe it's feeling vulnerable. And there's weakness. And so that means you're weak if you need assistance or help, but I think it's so smart. So you take it in the business world. So I've been to your business about 10 years ago and seen this leadership, we'll call it, in action, where everyone's getting together. There's someone speaking to the group, but everyone feels like it's even employees feel like it's their business too. There's this camaraderie and leadership happening. And I see And back to the Gallup, what I've seen in my experience is if I go out and I do executive leadership training with a board or a financial firm, everyone's dialed in right away. Great. My team needs this. I need this. Great. But then the team continues on practicing and doing the work. But the executive, I call them like the little balloon that floats up in the sky. Entrepreneurs go all the way up here and they have all these shiny ideas they can't execute because they're futuristic and we need them to be thinkers. But then they forget to come down to base camp and to say, okay, how's everyone doing? They're the ones that kind of get derailed because they got the leadership for everybody. Everyone do the thing, but they forget about the accountability to themselves. So I think I went through a couple of phases of business ownership, being in the insurance business. As you know, Steve, we're a family of entrepreneurs. I mean, it probably goes beyond my uncle and grandfather and you. Like, there's probably more that I don't know. I think even back, was there even grocery in Omaha, old school?
Grocery,
absolutely.
The Nabbities came from a lot of entrepreneurs.
So we have being younger and even seeing my father do multiple things, I'm like, can't this guy just pick one thing and just do it? And then as I get into my mode and I have fun with collaborating with different organizations and seeing where I can help, I go, oh my gosh, I'm doing it too. So then you have to have a talk with yourself and you have to say, what's paying the bills? Where's the family at? Are we dialed in? Mm-hmm. And if you listen to Matthew McConaughey's green light audio, I kind of caught a portion of it. He talks about these going in red or keeping it in the black. Like your bank accounts, almost like of your business or your brain, can go, it can be negative at times while you work on a project, but you got to pull it back up. So you just have to kind of figure out what's the main focus here at this point. But like you said, as you get into your 50s and older, like you might need that coach to help you focus on the next transition. Because I think if you focus on just this retirement, this traditional antiquated retirement thought process, it's like people get there, they don't know who their spouses are anymore. They don't know like who they are. They're only getting the pat on the back for the production on the stage at the conference. When that's all over, I'm seeing men that are my friends and they're older than I go through this. I don't know who I'm going to be when I transition. That's where I started going, I can't have that happen to me. And we need to take it even down to the next generation, even younger. There's not this traditional, you need to go to school and be the doctor, the attorney. There's no rules anymore, I don't think. I think there's so much creation happening now. It doesn't have to happen at university, which, Steve, you might yell at me for that. I think you might. I'm not saying don't go to school, but like there's Ivy League and there's league and then there's get to work and get out there and do it and just tinker and test and but do it within the realms of what you love to do. And so there's so many ways I could go down the rabbit hole on that, but I think you kind of need that third party. It's like hiring the it's like hiring the interior designer. We did that during COVID because my husband had ideas and I had ideas. I'm probably right, but we needed a mediator and she helped us agree with me.
So true.
So sometimes you hire counsel for advice. We do that with taxes. Why not do that for our own brains to keep the science in check, especially if we're getting older? And Steve, like we have these health conditions that can happen or injuries. And I have my hormones checked quite often because if something's not, or my like your vitamins are off, you might be off and you might just be not yourself. So if you're dialed in on like the wellness front, then you can figure out if there's a glaring issue and maybe it's not work, maybe it's a conversation you need to have, but we all need a little bit of help. And I think it's like, as long as we can work together and have that community, people go to church to get help. Why wouldn't we want that on the business side too? It doesn't make sense. So anyway, I'll leave it there for you to pick up.
I think there's just something with work and even I think to a lesser extent your personal life, but I think there's this the pride is so pervasive. At least I know looking back at my own professional life, I remember times where, in a past profession, I was head of marketing and I took it upon myself. Like I had to be the premier marketing person in this group. I had to have all the good ideas. And I would feel like if I had somebody who maybe wasn't even in marketing that had a fantastic idea about marketing, I would feel not offended, but almost like, Like,
Hey,
this is my job. Don't
it's
like,
yeah,
that's a great idea, but that was supposed to be my idea.
yeah.
And I would be like, there'd be this pride that's so pervasive that, and I think that's where really, looking back on my 20s when I didn't even consider getting a coach, it's because like I'm the marketing guy. I don't need somebody to tell me how to be a better marketer. And I think I wonder if when you get older, you just start realizing, like I'm coming up on 40. I'm starting to realize like there's a lot I don't know. And if
Yeah.
I want to, and I've probably maxed out my capacity for training myself and learning myself. I need somebody to push me, that 1% every day a little further. And I think you get older, you start to realize, all right, to hell with pride. If I want to
Yeah.
get better, I need somebody else's help.
Jake, that's in my early career was just like the way you were thinking. You're the CEO of the company, you've got the ideas, you get the team around you and go, go, go. And then all of a sudden you realize that as the company grows, you're going to fail if you keep that mindset.
Yeah.
And Amber, you were talking about when you came to our company and you saw our meetings, one of the biggest transformations we had is when we called it real-time coaching. If you're a football coach and you're playing football on Saturday in Husker Stadium, what do you see the coach doing? He's going up and down the sidelines, talking to the guys when they're coming off the field, talking to the offense. All these different coaches are real-time coaching. But what happens in the business world, you work on 30 days, and at the end of the 30 days, you review the financials. Can you imagine running a football program and you play 4 games, and then at the end of 4 games, you look at the video and see how you did? That's unheard of. But we do that in the business world. So with our we were meeting daily, real-time coaching. We didn't want to wait till the yearly review. And you want to be right in there in the game. And when we did that, we started seeing people open up. We started seeing people coming up with ideas, feeling comfortable about that. And it transformed our business because it made a group of people come together to come up with really great ideas. You're talking about entrepreneurs and shiny things. One of the things, Amber, we had to put in our conference room was a disco ball. We have a disco ball conference room, and that was the shiny ball. And so if something would come up in the conference room, we're having a meeting, you could point to it and go, that's a shiny ball. Great idea, but not now.
Not now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
lots of fun.
So back to, and I'm not just focused on Gallup. I'm collaborating with an Enneagram specialist. We're doing a women's conference and having a breakout, just utilizing the tools. And I recently did a study group with Colby Index and looking at my husband who works with me, his versus mine, and where he might drive me nuts is actually a strength. It's just outside of my strengths. And so the combined effort is good. You just have to be aware of it. So what I also notice about, say, Strength Finders, some of these assessments is that we don't want everyone to be the same person. So if you're hiring and you have this new hire and they're just such a fun, I've seen, no offense, but I've seen a lot of men do this where they might hire their buddy or someone that feels like them, and then they're broing out and they're not getting anything done, where you need someone almost the opposite to stay on task. Versus the attaboy kind of, and I've seen that just in some of the financial services arena because there's not a lot of female, but we don't want everyone to be the same. And so as we take this into boards and taking it in the nonprofit space too, it's like, so Steve, we could talk about speaking. Like for me, I know I don't love always being on stage, grabbing the mic and walking around and having this. I like more of the conversation podcast style. I feel more in control. But I know you might feel differently. So I'm actually doing some training, and I have other questions for you just in a moment. But when I did a recent board, an executive board with Gallup, we looked around the table. We had all these executing people. And then we had the woo girl. The woo girl is the girl that's like, I got to go bebop around and talk to people. She wants the luxury events that are signature events that people come to, and they pay a ticket price, and it's like the gala stuff. But then I might be more efficient in the sense of like virtual education because I'm high input. My business is all virtual. I don't meet people face to face. So I might find more use and more calendar time blockings with the virtual stuff, then she might need that in person, grabbing the mic, walking around. And there's no right or wrong. It's she needs to get a couple of those on the calendar. I'll build in some virtual. And then the people that are going to get things done, give them the details. But those that are more futuristic and more one-on-one, more people, let them work the crowd, recruit members, go and take care of people, and let's just get all the talents out there, but assign the role to the, if you have an event, we've noticed people get on stage and they're really shy and that's just not their thing. Well, maybe they need to practice that to get a little bit better. But if there's that woo in the room, let them do that. That's where they're going to shine. Don't put the introvert up there to completely exhaust them, where they could be better used somewhere else. And that goes to the team, and that goes in even to your family. It can.
Amber, you talked about you do coaching with women in the business world, and can you elaborate on that? What's different since COVID? People are at home, they're in the business world, going back to office. Can you give us some idea what that's like and what the coaching that you go through?
After COVID, and again, working for a virtual business, I have partners all over the nation, but I needed to get into a community. And so I joined Women in Insurance and Financial Services. WIFS has a national presence for over 80 years. People in the insurance world might know NAFA, and there's other organizations as well. But this focuses on women, but we do have male members. We have our man-ambassadors, but there's a high focus on
man-ambassadors?
Man-ambassadors. So I think
what a name.
you guys would be one of those, because we have our men showing up to support, but they know that we're a little bit different in our approach. And there's a whole set of statistics on women inheriting a lot of money, trillions of dollars, and then being the main point person on a lot of things, especially caregiving and so on. So we really, again, Jake, back to, I have to help people get their affairs in order, because things are going to get real. And we need to not give any extra brain space to the stress. We need to see everything's ready. It's just like, which folders are we pulling from while we're on the phone with the doctor or with our loved one because they're sick? Like, we just need to not give any more brain space to the stress and the drama behind life. So with females, it was more like the community aspect. We went into this women's group, and I've never been so supported by other women. It was real. It was like, back to those ideas. If you have a great idea, but someone else did, you might get a little jealous, or like, hey, I wish I thought of that. Where these women are so excited when you excel, and they lift you up. And I never had that in the corporate world. If I was going back to my high responsibility, I would have women be mean to me in the office because I was annoying, because I like to work. So they thought of it like, she's, brown nosing, and I'm like, let's get stuff done. And so you can see I'm the cheerleader, and they're like, can we just go to lunch?
Yeah.
So I'm actually in this group of women that are super excited. And I noticed they started introducing me to others out at conferences as Amber does XYZ. And they're telling people what I'm good at. And I'm like, compliments are weird. And I realized this is what they see in me. This is what I'm good at. That is my business outside of my main business. Look at what people are saying about you and what they're coming to you for advice. Don't downplay that. Why are we doing that to ourselves? Develop that. Leave the rest to the other people that you're going to pull on the team. Delegate out what you're not strong and add in. Solopreneurs kind of have to do everything, but once you do it, and then you know what you like and what you don't like, hire for the things you don't like that you're just wasting your time there. So that's where you can really learn where poke the holes in it and then fill in the gaps. And so I don't know if that long-winded answers your question, but through the women's groups, it's becoming, once you start, then there's more. And it's so cool now that I'm going to a national conference in October, and I'm moderating a panel of next gen women that are high producers. And then I have breakouts. And so now it's turning into something I never thought would be something I would be doing. But that leads me to some of the public speaking. And I'm going to some workshops, Steve. And what do you know about 10X?
Mr. Grant Cardone?
Yeah.
Know quite a bit. There's 10X. There's another one, Advance Your Reach by Pete Vargas. I can talk to you offline to that. I went to Milwaukee for their training. Phenomenal.
Yeah. I'm doing about 4 of them in the next 12 months. And so I've chosen to spend money on going out and going on stage because of the things people are asking of me. I need to get better. And I need to say, I can podcast. I have my podcast. It's my favorite. But if I need to go a couple times a year out main stage and helps, the thing about it, Steve, like for me, I skipped financial services for over a decade because I was not, to me, mathematically inclined. I thought that's all it was. It's not the case. I can educate my way and help a certain grouping of people. And I want the younger people to know about that. And so I'm really passionate about the younger people. We're not having new advisors come into the industry. It's got to be cool and hip, and the gig economy like is kind of taking the talent. So we got to pull that back in, and we need good boots on the ground. So I'm really excited to help the younger people see it's not about always the grades. It's what are you good at? What do you like to do? You can build that into this industry. So that's my answer to the women's group. It's beyond that, but it started with empowering people were empowering me. So it's really about who you hang out with. So, but taking it, just wrapping up a little bit about Gallup, your mother, is she 93 in January? She's 92 right now as we record.
Marjorie,
Marjorie,
who still drives a car and looks like she's late 60s and sharp as a whip. So we've got some good genes.
But true. But is there something to be said? And Jake, this is part of my answer, and I forgot about this really at the first beginning of this, is when you see a woman who was happy living her life as a mother of 4, she really did say, I don't have any, with all the resources now and women's rights and all the things, like I wouldn't change it. It wasn't like she felt she was not in the right place at the right time, but she kept pushing the envelope on her own education, and she never settles. So then she does this thing where and this is in a different episode on my podcast, where she had a trust and she gave money to the grandchildren, but the way she delivers this business mindset, and she'll be self-admitted, I'm not a businesswoman, that stuff, it's not really my thing, but she's all about the intellect and higher learning. So she participates with her grandkids. I mean, 15 years ago now, she did her first round, and everyone worked with her with their business plans to get out there and be better. And then she is on her round 2 at 92 while she's remodeling her house. So I feel like she doesn't see like I'm 80, so now it's over with.
Past
and
me. Yeah.
She's a widow, and she did not stop because of a passing of her spouse. She just said, okay, what am I going to do now? And she just keeps trucking ahead. So I think there's something she's doing from a like brain science thing where it's keeping her young, because she's not giving up. She keeps learning. She keeps adding on. But when we were looking at Strength Finders, because she's done hers, we looked at hers one day, and I walked through her intellection and some of her top 5, and she's really absorbs the information, and she'll be really kind of reserved before she'll speak. And so she's very eloquent. If you picture Miss Manners, Marvelous Marjorie, that's really her. And she'll say, oh, Davy, to my dad when he's acting up. And but she has the perfect table, like the epitome of Miss Manners. But she told me that her mother would be hard on her. Either, I forget how she said it, but she's like, just Margie, you're always in your head. And her mother kind of tissed her a little bit. And it wasn't like, I think in a mean way, but what if her mother knew this is Marjorie's strengths and she wasn't like, I don't know exactly what it was for her.
Like she fostered it or cultivated it.
All these years, could we do better now with the resources we have? Absolutely. Let's celebrate what we see in our children, our younger people on our team. And there's a big eye roll with millennials and the Gen Zs where, they're all just on their phones and they just won't look at me. And true, but what else are they really good at? And so I'm really passionate about what I'm seeing or reading about the baby boomer mindset of the Gen Zs. So they might be living with mom and dad, but they might have more money in the bank. So Steve, I don't know if you see anything on the commercial side, but I think there could be a really great grouping of young people that start building passive income strategies earlier, not waiting for retirement buckets to kick in. I don't know if you want to share on that.
Well, let me take a little side note on here. One of the things Lynette and I are doing are a grandparenting ministry
Mm.
and engaging and firing up grandparents to be involved in the upbringing of their grandchildren. And one of the topics in the seminar is that the grandparents, and I'm one of them, is that you see the
Mm.
kids on their iPads and on their phones, and what it's doing to them, in the
Mm.
sense that they are frustrated and they're always on their
Mm.
phone, and so there's this natural tension from that. And one thing about with the Legacy Coalition is the group,
Mm.
but they are saying they want grandparents to lean into them,
Yeah.
lean
Mm.
Yeah.
into the grandkids, and understand that technology and how they can have a great influence on their grandkids, um, and not be standoffish. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're on the phone and using the iPad, but you need to understand and meet them where they are,
Yeah.
because they
They
aren't going
don't
to
know any
come.
better.
They don't. Hey,
It's
we're in
not
the
their fault
'60s,
that, yeah, but the kids, we gave these things to them. First of all, let's have some
yeah,
responsibility.
right.
But they don't know the phone was on the wall and the cord would get all tied up. And we're like, hey, call waiting. Get off the phone, mom. I'm waiting for a call. They don't know about any of that.
Yeah.
So we might have more appreciation of the then and now, but leaning in is so important. And they're not waiting for classroom. That goes back to, let's not, because the older, I will say, grandparents or others will, or even parents will say, can you just get off the phone, can you just,
Hmm.
and they're just kind of picking at them. It's probably going to happen. It's not most likely going to change. But what if you then build an activity in or go do something where you can't have your phone? Let's pick a vacation. Let's go do something where there's just no Wi-Fi. Sorry, oops, I didn't mean
Yeah.
for that to happen. But going back to keeping things simple, going back to nature, going back to, we
Taking a
can.
walk.
Yep.
So are we actually allowing, and we just did this recently with my daughter. We talked with some physicians about just the tablets and the laps. There's literally, you can't see it, but there's the, I won't say it right, but the frequencies are in, we're bringing those frequencies with our watches, everything into our bloodstreams, and we can't see it. So we don't think it's real, but it's affecting sleep. It's affecting our stress and our hormones. According to my health, we'll call it my health alliance that I work with just for my own health. I recently did less with my daughter, allowing it, and we're having more conversations. And I go, I was doing this. It was my choice to let her have this tablet while I went to go get something done. But if I say no and be present, I'm doing more work too, so that we have this relationship and it's better. So I love that you're doing that. I didn't know you were doing that.
Oh yeah, it's more. It's coming. It's more things. This Legacy Coalition
Mm.
that's doing that. But Amber, you were talking about those. Just one quick thing. One thing that Legacy Coalition talked about is the development, or the lack of development of critical parts of the brain
Mm.
when you're working or using an iPad all the time, and how it's going to hamper you. They
Mm.
comparing kids at that age, one's with iPads, one's without, and parts of the brain are not growing like they should be.
Mm.
And it's so scary. So
Yeah.
um, I applaud you for doing that.
Well, it looks like we will maybe be collaborating more on that. I can't wait to hear more. So,
It's awesome.
yeah.
Uh, Amber, I'd love to before we end the conversation, in a while, I want to talk about the pathways to peak performance. We've touched on it little by little, but I want to really focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
But before I do, I want you start talking about, how if Grandma Marjorie had a parent who had maybe fostered or cultivated her strengths rather than,
Mm-hmm.
tisking them. What can you give some examples of things you're doing with your kids to maybe embrace those unique quality traits of your kids or their strengths? Can you give some examples for people who have kids and are now thinking, okay, what do I, maybe there's something I should be doing to do with my kids as well?
Well, Steve, you might have to help me on this. When we grew up, it was the traditional ways of success are to have the job as it wasn't so much business owner. That wasn't really the title. It was be a doctor, be an attorney, be an engineer. That's where all the money is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not true. There's so many ways to be successful, and it's not always about the money either. So I think that I'm trying to be sure that if I notice that my daughter is picking up a certain thing that she loves, and I'm, even when she's say being ornery, and I'm laughing like that's probably a bit of me in the DNA, and it's business leadership where she's very particular about having certain things, and I'm going, oh gosh, it's my fault she's doing this. But when they're frustrating you, look at what it's actually all about. Their brains are only computing a certain level of like literal what's happening right now in front of them. But if there's, my daughter's being frustrated because there's a process that's not being followed, she might be more like me, and I can't get mad at her for the fact that I want to kind of, let's hurry up and go on to bed. We're used to reading books before bed. 2 for me. I read to her, and then she reads me whatever. We try to work on words, but she'll make up a story and read her books back to me. It's her favorite thing. And then we do dreams before bed, where we talk about what are we going to dream about, because there was a healthy brain book that I read. I had some family with some brainish, like kind of some brain, some health issues, and I just want to get back to the science behind that. They were talking about going to sleep and having rest is one of the critical things, but going to bed happy. And the author of the book had pictures in the hallway to his room of his family, and really no electronics in the room. So you're having this happiness as you go in. So with my daughter, I said, why don't we do dreams? And so sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I don't want to even do this. But
yeah, right.
What are you going to dream about tonight? We make up a story and we're happy. So if she's being naughty, I'll say, no dreams for you. And she's like, oh, Mama. Like, who would have thought taking books away and I'm not going to do dreams with you and sing Twinkle, Twinkle to you, or whatever our pattern is. But she's a rule follower in that sense, where it's kind of funny. I'm like, oh, I've created this monster. But maybe I'm seeing the fruit of her personality, and like, let's put her in positions for her older in life, like that would be beneficial. And I think just paying attention to that and not being upset if they're not the mathematic wizard, but they're more on the artistic side. Like, let's pay attention to that. Otherwise, we're putting them in a box they don't belong. That feels awful when you're in a position you don't love. So I think it can go down even to the younger level.
You're talking about a position that you may be put into. You're talking about Grandpa Wally. I don't know if you knew this, but when I was in college, my sophomore year, Grandpa Wally came up to me and said, figuratively, son, it's time to get into the insurance business. Take over.
Nobody wants to do that. Nobody.
Well, and
Dave's
for
like,
me to grow, and for me to become a man, I had to take the insurance exam.
Oh, that was the man card?
That was the man card.
Wow.
And then,
interesting.
So I went on a Saturday and took the insurance exam. Guess what happened?
Did you fail?
Fail.
I failed it miserably. My dad, Wally, was so disappointed. And I think that was a God thing, Amber, because then I switched to mechanical engineering because I liked those type things. And it goes back to putting your kids and your employees in the position to excel. The right seat on the bus. Can you see me selling insurance?
Yeah, I could.
No way.
I think
I
you
could
would
see you
do
selling
well.
anything.
Yeah,
anything.
that's true.
Yeah, but I'm a tangible. I got to hold the product.
Yeah.
I got to see
Would you be joyful in doing it? Probably not.
So but the entrepreneur, so the thing about Grandpa Wally is there's a glimpse in my mind of Wally, and he was funny at Easter, but I think he was otherwise serious. But I think there was a jokester in him, but he was otherwise pretty serious. So I don't know what he was like as a dad for you guys.
He was a jokester. Marjorie would kind of tone him down a little bit. But if you got him away, and we went fishing with the boys up in the cannon, got him away, he was like one of the guys. And it was a different side. I never saw that. And when I saw it, it was very rare, very stoic. I need to be the dad. I need to be everything right. But as you know, hey, our house was crazy town. But it was so
I'm thinking
much fun.
You really repelled this stoic, serious nature. Was that like you had to say no to all of that and be the rebel? Because I don't know that you could be very serious and direct when it's business, but you're also very goofy, and you know it. So do you
I,
think you
I'm,
just
I just have to embrace who I am,
yep.
and it is it. And if something goes wrong or et cetera, as Jake knows, just own it. Just
Yeah.
own it,
Right.
Yep.
and adapt to it. So
Oh my
no, but I
gosh, I
would
know.
in growing up with in the figurative white picket fence
Yeah. Yeah.
and middle income Omaha, Nebraska. We had a
Yeah.
great childhood. Now, if you talk to Marjorie, she would say that she at one time she was so mad at us. She said, "If the cops show up one more time,
I
you
can't even
guys are going to
imagine.
Boys
Boys
Town."
Town.
Well, and that's the thing where I grew up with a very strict father, and I go, oh, no wonder why, because he's worried that I would do the things he was doing, and I probably did
Oh,
do a
yeah.
little bit of what he was.
Yeah.
So going back to that, I think Marjorie was the only one that saw my wild child rebel side and was like, let's just get her to Arizona and she'll be okay. We just need to let her do her thing. And I didn't remember that, but she told me, she goes, oh yeah, I gave you the seal of approval. And I'm doing this voice because she is Marjorie and she talks like, hello,
That's
just
great.
this cute little, hello, hello, grandma. So she's always been in, she's always seen, I think, the power behind the spirit of the person, the individual, and wanting people to just excel with that. So that had to be funny though, because I think she was probably really disappointed or shocked a lot of the years growing up with you four being pretty wild, like pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did.
So back to the kiddos, really the other thing too, with back to the positions, the typical success story. I did not get into the business because of my dad. And I say that nicely in the sense of I saw him doing the whiteboard, the buckets, all the things. He could write reverse, upside down, and the in-person, there was something about that. And it kind of trickles back to the public speaking thing. There's something about my business model that works for me that wasn't always out there in the real world back in the day. So I thought accounting grades were bad. I do test and fail tests or have it kind of takes me like twice. But now that I know I'm an activator, I'm a get start, go, let's get things happening. I'm impatient. It's great for my transaction work. It's great for my consulting and speaking. But the long conversation, I call myself like residential real estate. I like to see something transactions 30, 60 days. The commercial transaction of like the traditional 3-year contract where you're hand holding. My personality is to take action. And I lack the empathy card of tell me why we didn't meet our goals today. Let's redirect the money over here. I cannot be a financial planner in my true core self in the traditional aspect because I almost don't have the, Steve, I think maybe you're a little bit like me in the sense of like, why didn't we make this happen? I don't know. What's the excuse? There's no excuses, So I lack that. I need the compassion from a strategic partner to pull that in for the people that need it. But I'm otherwise going to giddy up, not sugarcoat it and say, tell me, I don't want to hear excuses. Here's the resources. Let's do it. But not everyone's built like me. So back to the kids though, when I see I have right now trademarking a couple business lines where Vivian is my daughter. Vivian, I won't say the book name yet, but like I'm working on a book release that almost has her as a character. As a kid grows up, the framework of it is like to try a lot of things that you might like. There is still some value in doing jobs that you don't love to kind of figure out where you want to be. But try a lot of things. It's okay that you don't know who you are right after college. It's almost nonsensical. Like, how are we supposed to know now that we know that even our brains are not developed? And Steve, I think this might have been a line from a movie, but when you said something about the 20s are for education, 30s are for is that from a movie or is that a Steve quote of really you kind of figure it out in your 40s?
That was someone else gave me that advice that don't worry about some kids come out of college and they think they have to have their whole life planned out. And I've got to make all this money and whatever. Mm-hmm. And the comment was in the 20s. Now that was years back. In the 20s, get your education out of the way.
Yep.
In the 30s, get your work experience. In the 40s, start running your own business. Now that was back in the earlier days. Now today, it's wild, wild west. You can go any direction.
Yep.
But And again, in what you're saying, not everybody needs to go to school and get graduate degrees and graduate degrees. It depends what you want and what you need and what your
Mhm.
strengths are from that
Mhm.
side. But it's everything's different today.
Yeah, so my idea is almost with the women's group, the nonprofit work I'm doing, there's a lot of breaking the generational cycle of poverty on a 2-year program here in Phoenix. And so in my mind, if I could put my daughter in this character and talk about these different jobs, almost like a financial literacy book for the young. There's a lot of lack of female authors out there that are in the business world compared to the men. So there's probably a niche there. I could create a book, even put that in the backpacks of some of these younger people and have them daydream about these other roles. The kids in kindergarten go fireman, fireman, policeman, all
Yeah.
these traditional ones. That's okay too.
Yeah.
And then it's going over the engineer, the attorney, like some of these traditional roles. But then let's introduce the data analyst, the others that are behind the scenes, or the ones that are, because you can be a business owner in so many ways. And what all others don't know is a lot of business owners out there, they operate like an athlete or a celebrity. You never see the celebrity or the athlete do the craft, and that's it. They have the clothing apparel line. They have the speaking engagement. They're doing pro bono work at the high school level. They're collaborating all over the nation to fit the off season. We can do that too. So most business owners have partnership agreements with multiple people that they want to collaborate with. Like think Shark Tank. Cardone's doing this all the time. And you have other foundations. So you have other people running it with you, not just you doing all these things. There's partnerships and then there's your business, but you can be a business owner and have multiple lines, but not be showing up to that every day. And that's what's the beauty about the business ownership piece. So I really want my daughter to see that and grow up with coming with me to these women's groups when I know she can kind of sit still and be good, and seeing mom out there making a difference. It's a legacy plan. So back to the very original part of this, Jake, is if I'm not doing the work and showing my child and my spouse and my family that I'm responsible, I'm not going to preach all these things and not do it myself. Every time I do something new with my planning, it's almost like I add that next level. So the legacy work that you're doing, Steve, I'm now doing extended care planning, which is the reformatted phrase for long-term care planning. It's not about insurance. It's about the plan, the emergency contact list. What if mom and dad don't live in the same state? We have to have conversations. So as I do more planning in my real life, I then add that or that partner to my fold so that I can add more value because I've walked the walk and I can talk it now. So I really want people to have more opportunities and more access, but people have to have the giddy up and they got to have some responsibility too. So really focusing on like Atomic Habits, that book is always like, you could always open it, read 2 sentences and close it and be like, I'm good for the day, because the nuggets in there are so good. You have to do it yourself though. You have to have accountability. We can't just close our eyes and wait for things to happen. So find out, back to my father, I didn't really give him the kudos on the other side. I skipped it, said heck no to insurance, which most of my partners' kids always say no. Insurance looks awful. You have to talk to people about insurance. That's boring. But 10 years later, they pulled me back. Same with my brother, same with my cousin. There's a lot of people that said, you can do this. Then I figured out my mode and my mojo. And then we all branched off and did other things our way. And we're all happy doing it. And so, but I just had this, I don't want people to think financial services or insurance is only one way. So if you don't test A plus, like I'm the C's in math and I might not always pass. Like it took me twice to get my insurance license. So it's funny that you said that. But I can be successful because I know how I can help people. Yeah.
And we see in our real estate business, it's all about relationships. It's all about connecting with other people. And you can't do everything all by yourself. You're going to fail. You need other people. Even in our business world, the same way. It's relationships and connecting with people, and not just sitting behind a desk.
And so Pathways of Peak Performance, Jake, that came from the COVID timeframe. I had a friend who owns she's now Carly. She's one of the most recent podcasts on there from, she's got a whole concierge wellness practice in Scottsdale. She is someone I looked up to because I saw the multiple lines. She works in hair science, and then she has other things that she's passionate about, but she doesn't do all that herself. So she says, I want you to speak at a workshop. And we named the original Pathways of Peak Performance, the pandemic proof your business. Everyone was shutting down and people were doing, these business owners were more like aesthetic practices, medical, hairstylists helping post-cancer patients. So if we're shutting down and we can't see people, we can't, it's not tangible, Steve. It's like we can't hand them anything. We can't hug them, shake their hand. You have to stay alive and afloat. So that's where we said 5 steps of the pandemic proof. We reformatted it and we start with focusing on talents. Focus on you. Celebrate where you're talented. Don't diminish those things. Don't play it down. Be who you are and try not to fix the things that you're not. And in owning that, there's a benefit there. So that's always a work in progress. Focusing on money would be the next category, that pillar, where if you have your personality, your style dialed in, if you know who you are and how you tick, then you can build your money goals from there. And you can carry that into relationships too, because if your spouse is not competent financially, they can still own finances. They just need to know how to organize things, or whatever they're deficient in, maybe the other spouse can be that for them. But don't be upset with your spouse if they think differently of you about money goals. And that's where a lot of couples can fight about money. Get on the same page and say, I need the spreadsheet, or I might need the book, and kind of meet in the middle, but build your money goals based upon how you're talented. Then you flow into risk management, which sounds so corporate, and people's brains shut off when they hear risk and insurance. Well, before we even talk about what you might need, do an audit on your life. And risk management might be just get your affairs in order. What does your office look like? Where are all your bills and the things that are important? Are they all paper? Are they online paperless? How organized are you from that aspect? And once you start auditing that, you can see what else do I need, working on the budget, working on cash flows, and real estate, can be one of those things. But then we might need to insure for the what ifs. And so then we continue moving on down that path and transfer risk until you have cash flow, passive income to cover that risk. You might need to insure for it. And then the fourth part is the marketing technology innovation part of the conversation, where find out what works for you, but really then having the awareness to shut everything else off so you're not completely always distracted. So build the efficiencies in the systems with the technology. I want to come back to this quickly before I wrap up with the number 5, but the 5th pillar is focusing on community. It kind of started with this whole idea of if you're sick, have that strategic partnership to pass a client off to somebody else if you're not able to work, because everyone was thinking COVID at the time. But it goes beyond that. We need mentors. We need to be mentees or a combination. We need our community. We need our church. We need whoever it is, because when times are tough, we might need those people. But then when you start networking, there's this nonprofit thing that happens, and then you're just dialed in, and you can have so much fun working with people, and it's not work. So coming back to like the marketing and things that you said, Steve, about communication. The community is one way. If you're an introvert, you can be online. You can dabble and go out for an hour or two, have coffee, come back home. The people that need that woo, I don't know, Steve, what your top 5 are, but if you need to be out and meeting people, do that, but don't expect everyone to love that. You kind of figure that out. But as we move into more technology and we have the AI and a lot of these opportunities to make us more efficient, a lot of people are scared about what that could mean for jobs. If we don't know who we are and we don't have our branding down as our personal who we are to the core, and we can't communicate with people, and if we get really tech savvy, innovative in life, and like who knows what can happen 10, 15 years down the road, it's really up to us to shine out of all of this. I think everything's coming back to communicating with people. Humans need that community, that support, that interaction. And I think that's going to be more important than ever to work on communication skills, because that might be our calling card for whatever the jobs might look like in the next 10 years. It's how are you showing up, and are you likable? And I think that goes
Amber,
back to knowing who you are.
Yeah.
Amber, you made a comment about the gig economy. And one of the things that we see that a lot of the people in today's workforce are being compensated by the number of hours they put in. And that's where their income is coming from. But if something happened to them that they couldn't get the income, they have no plan B. There's no plan B revenue stream. There's no passive income.
Yep.
And How do you see that with your clients there? That how many of those clients have a plan B at some point where they go, I've got to put some money away, whether it's real estate or something else, get and build that passive income. We got clients that they build up passive income to the point that they work when they want to work because they're
Financial freedom.
passive income,
Hmm.
financial freedom.
Okay, so this is going to sound a little conspiracy theorist, or I don't know, whatever people might call it, but we have to change our thinking of everything we've always known, which can even be down to the foods we eat. We've been programmed somehow to think that you must throw this money in a bucket for later that other people manage. And I'm not saying don't do the stock market, but I will hear older generation say there's always this rate of return that comes with the market. You have to wait 30 years and you'll see it average out, and whatever the story is. It also depends on where you were invested. But what I understand from people like you, Steve, and others that are in real estate is that private equity, having control over your own dollars today, opportunity costs, velocity of money, if we give everything into the paycheck and it's just pulled out and moved somewhere else, we lose out on opportunities that are right in front of us. And that is really taking away passive income. We're waiting for later, then we have taxes, and we're waiting for this ideal dream life way in the future. And we're not presently living now. And that's a problem for me because we don't know how long we have.
Hmm.
So,
And the goal should be to live off your passive income,
Yep.
not the revenue that's coming in from your daily job and et cetera.
Yep.
And that's when we encourage people
Yep.
build up that passive income. There's multiple ways to do it, but live and have fun with that. And then you've got your plan B, and like you say, financial freedom. You've got the ability to
Yeah.
do the things you want to do and not be tied down and beholden
yeah. And I mean, that's where
to
the
the.
accountability comes in. Okay. Are you saving some money so that you have this ability to put this money into these other strategies? But you have to be okay with putting the work in right now
Mhm.
as we have this. And I don't even go off of like what the trends are for the market, let's just say, in the sense of inflation and people are panicking. Let's take the opportunities and I mean, we can look at the history of time, and as we ride the wave, there's things that we can do on either side. Take control of your dollars and put it to work based upon what's happening. And really, real estate is one of those things that, I mean, you could speak to this more because you study the statistics, but I
Mhm.
think that private equity certainly has a higher rate of return than leaving your money for the what if down the road. So I'm not saying don't do those things,
Hmm.
but the passive income is the way to have freedom, and you insure until you can essentially
Mhm.
have that passive income. But the resilience, back to the pathways, it's those 5 pillars. If you can fold yourself into the 5, and it's different for every person, when life gets tough, you can really bounce back with resilience because you're dialed in, you're ready. And I think that keeps our brains available for the other things that we need to really focus on when there's a problem. But the cash flows and the passive income take a little bit of work up front. But what I mean by that is it's learn what your financial sophistication is. Your competency does not have to be, like I said, great grades. That's great. But what are you doing in your life right now to be accountable and to put things to work? And I don't know what you see for the younger generation currently present day, but I am hopeful. A lot of people tease me about this, but I think if the younger generation has seen what has been done out there in the economy, they don't want that for themselves. So I hear that there's more of a boomer like mentality, a lot of savers. So if we can help educate them so they can put this into motion while they dabble and try jobs that are paying the bills, I think that's a beautiful way to really start their lives earlier than we ever did. Do the job, go to work, dabble, find out what you like, earn income to pay your bills. But on the side, you could be generating that income. Eventually, you'll find that break even point, and then you're really moving into the next phase. And so
Hmm.
I don't know if that answers a question or kind of puts thoughts out there, but I really am excited about that. But we need to give people the resources. I'm really passionate about that.
And the neat thing is then they become in control
Mm-hmm.
of their financial conditions, and by generating that passive income. But yeah, it's an amazing thing.
There's so much confidence in having that control. So it, again, does not mean you have to have this level of academia experience and education. It's, you gotta, that's a little bit more of that. When you're talking about in your 30s, that's where you're really putting your skill set to work, and, and allowing yourself to have those opportunities. That's where you can stay working or not, you choose, because you have other things going to work for you that we truly see rate of return on. And you don't have to wait 30 years.
And I go back to when you come out of college, and Amber, you said this too. And I'm repeating that people think I've got to figure out my life for the next 50 years. And if you go talk to, even in my life, if you looked what I started out of college doing and what I ended up doing is so far, but the journey was a blast. And if you look at other successful entrepreneurs and business owners and people just in general, they are usually not doing what they were doing right out of college. They were on the journey and a life took them. They took opportunities and things worked and things didn't, but they're usually not doing what they started out of college. And some of the stories are phenomenal.
Yeah. So I think for me, when I do meet younger people, I feel like I might be able to fast track their not wasting their time with some of the antiquated approaches in financial services. That's a goal. You don't have to just start working somewhere and take your Series 7. You don't even know what that does when you start and you're so green, but they just throw you in this. They want your list of people so they can have that book of business growing for them.
Yeah.
And what if you want to be high production? What if you are somebody that wants to be an employee only? Even this morning, I asked a physician, do you want to be private practice? Do you want the production based where you can make just as much money as you want? No, I want to leave work and go home and turn it off. Some of us are crazy and we don't want to turn that off. Some of us just want to keep doing it all day long. And then we
keep going.
Build capacity, please. But that's okay. And someone I think it was yesterday, like they're in Pennsylvania. I'm in Arizona. They were from Florida. Once they go up to Pennsylvania, they go, I like having seasons. I go, that's great. I'm glad you do, because I don't. And I can't have everyone living here. So you stay over there and that's cool. But I mean, Amber, we all can't be doing the same stuff. And I'm work with the words. They work with the bodies. It's good because I can barely do a B12 injection on myself. I get paranoid about needles.
Yeah. All right, Amber, before we wrap up, we like to go into what we call a speed round. Quick questions, quick answers. It's a great way for our audience to get to know you as the guest a little bit more. So I'll just jump right in. Do you have any daily rituals that you swear by?
Getting a lot of sleep. I'm super lame. It has to be 8 hours. Sometimes I get up at 4:30 because I've slept my 8 hours to get ahead of the day. There's a sweet spot between 4:30 and 6 where no one's bugging me. The office isn't emailing me. It's awesome. So
that's really
getting
good.
Ahead of the day. Yeah.
All right. What's one item you could not live without?
Coffee. Nespresso.
I think you need that at 4:30 in the morning, right?
Yeah. And I'll go regular caffeinated, decaf I'll blend in the decaf so I can sip while I work in the morning. Yep.
That's good. What's one thing in life, business, or real estate that you're really excited about right now?
Are you kidding me? How am I supposed to answer that?
I don't know. You're supposed to tell me that.
I don't know. Like my brain explodes because I have too many things I can't articulate.
Give me three.
Say it again.
What's 3 things in life, business, or real estate that you're really excited about right now?
Like I seriously have a hard time answering that.
Are you going on any trips? Are you starting a new course are you going to be on stages talking? Did you read something really interesting?
I do all those things every day, all the time. So what's really exciting is I'm becoming president. I'm a crazy hamster, but don't put that in there. Okay.
I'm not cutting that.
This fall, I roll into presidency for Women in Insurance and Financial Services, the presidential chair. And if I expand on that, we're doing more strengths building, really looking at on the Phoenix level, how to empower the women that are there so we can have really good events. That carries over into 2024. That's my year to have events. So we're really trying to dial in the learners, the social butterflies, the people that need the takeaways, and really listening to build out really, really great curriculum. So while doing that, then there's opportunities to travel. And what I'm trying to do is bring as much with, let's just say, enough business to different cities where I can write that off as a business expense while also dragging my family with me. And it's a 2-for-1. So I'm all about repurposing, rinse and repeat. So make it a business thing, but pull the family, bring them in for the ride, have my kids see me do that for more of a leadership. And then my husband's also part of the business now. So he does his thing in his way and he networks, and I'll be the one, kind of the workhorse. Yep.
That's great. In what situations do you find you're most happy or fulfilled?
I like to be productive. So it's really kind of having the ability to have projects, creating things. So most recently, a lot of the groups of people I hang out with, the lunches I have, maybe even the happy hours, which are rare now, are with people that are building things with me. So I have a hard time relaxing and just going on cruise control. I want to be around people that were constantly innovating. And so I could exhaust people at times. So, but I usually try to hang around with the groups that don't mind that.
That's so funny. And I'm breaking my own rule by keeping this speedy. You're definitely a nabbity, because I remember Steve being on vacation on a beach and he's messaging me about work. And I'm like, aren't you on vacation? Don't you just stop and
we're
keep going?
We're earning our vacation, because if you could be productive for a couple hours, then you can put that phone aside and I've done the work. Now I get to, hang out all day and just plug it in and be aside. Yeah. So I think it's like that that reward in the morning of I've done the work. I'll go to Mexico at the condos with my family. My mother-in-law gets so mad. You need to relax. No, I need to make money and then I'll relax.
No, you need to relax.
You need to give me some space to make some money.
Yeah.
Mother-in-law.
Last question. The podcast's obviously called Heading West. We talk about people's journeys through life. Last question for you. When you're done heading west in life, where do you hope it ends up?
I think with all the networking and the collaboration, there's no retirement for me. It's just, it'll be more global. It'll be more global, where I have friends in other countries that I'd be going to see, and we'd be doing something together. Maybe nonprofit, maybe not, but yeah.
Amber, if people want to find out more about you, if they want to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
So shameless plug, on YouTube, you can find Amber Stitt, The Amber Stitt Show. So we named it The Amber Stitt Show, but really it follows the Pathways of Peak Performance, the 5 pillars. amberstitt.com is where my blog is at. So you can find the podcast there. And there's more information there too, just about business and lifestyle. More of those things I like to write about as I experience them. And then, so between that and MD Disability Quotes, where I have my medical practice there for my physicians. Other than that, it would just be, you could go there and find the contact information and book a consultation that way if you need to. Otherwise, you can find reading materials on the blog.
Love it. And we'll link everything on this podcast. And if you're interested in learning more about private real estate investing and generating those passive incomes, go to skylinepointcapital.com. But again, Amber, thanks for joining us. That was an absolute blast. And I am pretty certain this will not be the last time that that we have you on.
I know.
Because there was a lot more we could have discussed. Yeah. Well, again, thanks again. And tune in next week for another episode of Heading West. Thanks, Amber.
Guys. That was fun.